Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Today, I want to talk about why your art is a magic spell. And I have been driving myself crazy trying to find a way to intellectualize this, to explicate it in a way that will make sense to your thinking brain. And by yours, I mean past me. Because for years, I did not take the work of materializing my ideas and my vision very seriously. I really let a lot of it, most of it, like 95% of it, live up in my brain. And that was enough for me. I thought it was enough for me. And then I wondered why nothing was ever getting done, and I never felt creatively fulfilled, and I was always waiting for like the real good, serious idea and plan of action that was going to just land on me, and I was finally going to be ready to go out there and do the work. And that never happened. Instead, I got so bored with living in my head like a little Gemini, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Black Moon, Lilith monster. And I finally got ready to actually just make shit. And I didn't care anymore whether the shit that I made was good. I didn't care whether it was it to me. I just wanted to make shit. I wanted to fill sketchbooks. I wanted to fill notebooks. And I talk all the time about how the core of my art practice at this point involves my hypersigil journal, where I put most of my drawings and most of my writing and most of my various practices, although I've really been slim on the practices. I do not do many practices in there anymore. I used to do a whole lot of like future journaling and stuff. A lot of that has fallen away besides just the core sort of channeling work, but there's that, and there is my pocket notebook. And the way I think of it is like my hypersigil journal is my brain, and my pocket notebook is my heart. And even though plenty of nonsense and plenty of trash and plenty of both of those things go in the opposite location, I do for the most part think of what I put in my hypersigil notebook to be more of my processing my ideas and processing my feelings. And I think of the stuff that I put in my pocket notebook more as just pure emotion, just pure shower thoughts, I like to say, just the absolute trash of my consciousness. And I say that lovingly, but I say it in order to appeal to and acknowledge the feelings of my younger parts of self who are still in here like, girl, that sucks. Girl, that's shit. Girl, why are you writing that down? Which they're not very loud anymore because they have mostly gotten on board with this idea of like, it's fun to write out some nonsense, you know? It's fun to write out some bullshit and give it a life outside yourself. Give it a physical body. There is like some kind of magic to that. I've really gotten my younger selves on board, but I did not get them on board by explaining it to them. When I first started this experiment, this whole idea that materializing your random thoughts and emotions, all of the different dross of your consciousness was a magic spell, it was just an idea. I wasn't really sure what it meant. I wasn't really sure how it works. How is it a magic spell? This was just an intuitive hit that I got. That even if the art you're making isn't super layered, super time consuming, super like ceremonial and ritualistic with all of these different components, parts, and steps and all that, even if it's just, you know, some hastily scrawled shit in a notebook that may not even make sense to me in the future, there is some kind of magic in that. And whenever I hold this little pocket notebook now, full of all of my little feelings, I feel the magic in it. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a tangible sense I have that like I am transmuting all of this random crap into some kind of like talisman that is supporting my creativity and that is supporting me in making my best work and that is also supporting my personal transformation. It is helping move me closer to the version of myself I want to embody. It's helping me embody the God self, as I like to say. And I have found that this is also the easiest part of my creative practice to upkeep because I have made it so blindingly simple. There really is no practice here. I'm not like the bullet journaling girlies who keep a whole backpack of art supplies with them to make these elaborate art journals. I love that. If you're into that, and if that doesn't become an exhausting chore to you after a while, I celebrate you. I love that. And I love looking at those art journals. And that is really what I thought I wanted to do for years. That's the sort of art journaling that I thought I wanted to do. But over time, I started to realize that was more my ego talking. My ego wanted something beautiful and presentable and elaborate in order to leave some kind of artistic legacy behind for who. Is it really going to have been worth the time and energy spent in the future? I don't know, but I can tell you right now that if I'm not showing up to it, because I've made it so difficult and so complicated and so energetically taxing, it's not going to happen, and therefore it's not going to exist for future me to enjoy. So I finally started realizing that what I actually want is really just to fill pages. I want to put as much crap in as many notebooks as possible. And I don't really care if it's my most dazzling work. I don't even really care if I ever look at it again. I just feel this strong impulse to make these elements of my consciousness manifest. And the truth is that I do like looking back through these. I do frequently look back through them as I go, and I enjoy what I see there. I enjoy all of my little scribbles. I love reading my little poetic ramblings, my channeled dream speak. It does what I had hoped a very elaborate art journal would do, but with a whole lot less energy spent. And because of my willingness to see it this way, I have come to see the simplicity and the messiness as part of the aesthetic, as part of the art style. And, the thing is, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I don't know that I've talked about this a whole lot, but I have, as part of my EDS, I have both finger joints that dislocate, and I also have an essential tremor, so my hand shakes, and it requires a lot of muscle control for me to even just write words on paper that look halfway legible. And so I can't write a whole lot of written text before my hand starts cramping. Drawing is a little bit easier on me because I tend to draw in a very messy, expressive, organic-looking style. That's my preference. So it's a lot easier for me to fill my notebooks with drawings than with handwriting. But that's another reason why I decided it was defeating the entire purpose for me to care so much about perfection and about things looking perfectly publishable, is because I was I have certain constraints that I have to work around and that I have to find a way to embrace. And I need to just embrace that that level of perfection is not for me in this lifetime. But I want to be able to work with what I've got, with the wobbly ass, shaky ass fingers that I got, and make something happen and make something that I can be proud of. And leave this sort of legacy that I'm building, because that's the way I think of it. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about as someone with a 10th house sun conjunct the midheaven is reclaiming the idea of legacy. Because my sun is also in Cancer. And we typically think of, the signs don't perfectly map onto individual houses, and that can really limit you if you're studying astrology and you too closely align those things. But there are certain patterns where we would say that, I don't know if it's that Capricorn has its joy in the 10th house. So there's some kind of sense of dignity to that an astrologer could illuminate here. If you look it up, you'll find it. But the point is that, like, I have this sort of backwards approach to legacy because my 10th house is in Cancer, because that is not where Cancer is the most comfortable. That is not necessarily the perfect domain of the moon. Where, like, I'm not thinking about legacy so much in this, like, colonial sense of, like, some bulletproof monument that other people will consume in the future that will, I'm just thinking of legacy differently. And I'm thinking of it in the sense that it's not so much about whether people consume this art that I'm making and these things that I'm leaving behind. It's just about giving it a life outside my body and understanding that that is enough. It's like if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it really fall? We can ask ourselves that question all day long. But I believe that things are not made real exclusively by perceiving them. Yes, everything is consciousness, but because everything is consciousness, not everything is happening inside human consciousness. I'm an animist. I believe that all of my objects have consciousness. All of the animals and trees and rocks and tables and technology and equipment around me have their own consciousness. And I believe that though it may express differently, it is not any different ontologically than my own. And I believe that, like, even my notebook is a witness to the things that I'm putting in it. I believe that is part of the art spell. I believe that is part of the magic spell that I'm casting by putting these ideas into this journal. And yeah, I keep thinking about how I could make this real to a younger me, because I hate that I've wasted, well, I don't know that I hate it. I tend to just kind of make peace with the way things have fallen out, because if I'm doing good today, then can any of it be said to be a mistake? But, I hate that I spent so much of my younger years not just making my shit, not just like putting my ideas out there on paper for no one else but me. Always in my head, there was some invisible authority judging everything that I do. I was constantly looking at myself from the outside rather than feeling myself from the inside. I was constantly a hostile observer. And honestly, I think one way you can think about this is that is like the inner colonist in your head that is objectifying you, that is dehumanizing you, taking you out of your human lived context and putting you into their own, into one that is hostile to you, that is not in appreciation or congruence with anything that you stand for and anything that you are. There is no appreciation for you as an individual, authentic, animal being. When I see the little nest that this tiny little squirrel guy outside my window has made in a magnolia tree, I don't look at it and think, wow, that's hideous. Terrible shape, terrible texture, poor construction. What was he thinking? I'm just like, wow. He made that. I watched him one day. I watched him pulling down all of these little branches and shoving them in. And somehow it manages to stay together. And that's incredible to me. He just pulled all of these little branches into this little nest, this little pocket of branches. And somehow it stays together, even though we've had some like crazy storms lately. And I'm just like, wow. Nature, so crazy. And so why can't I look at my art the same way? Why can't I appreciate the haphazard feralness of extant human impulses? Why can't I appreciate the randomness and, yes, sometimes the mess of it? The fact that it does contradict a lot of ideas that we have about what is in alignment with aesthetic principles, in alignment with a sort of order of beauty that we humans have created. A lot of times mathematical, a lot of times with our prefrontal cortex understanding and processing of the world. But I don't have to perceive everything that way. I can choose to take a larger perspective, and I can choose to be a friendly witness to my own consciousness, to my own unfolding, to my own existence as a human being on this earth. I can choose to enjoy the things that I express that are wildly imperfect, maybe even trite and embarrassing, maybe disgustingly saccharine. You know, I can choose to appreciate all of it, and that is another aspect of the magic spell, is me appreciating my own thoughts and feelings in a way that I can't really stop and do. I can't fully stop and appraise them and take them in when I'm not externalizing them, when I'm not actually getting them out of my head where I can look at them more clearly. Because there is this element of slowing down to write down a thought, even if you don't read it back, like even just the process of writing down a thought and slowing down to be present with it, you're able to see it more clearly, you are able to appreciate it more deeply. It is a different process than just contemplating things in your head, than just letting your ponderings live in your noggin. And it's taken a lot of patience over the last couple of years in order to really allow this experiment to unfold. It's taken a lot of patience for me to take this hypothesis that making random crappy art is a magic spell and to fully put it through its paces and keep coming back to this idea and keep pondering it and being present with the experience of executing it and keep trying to decide and decipher for myself, is that true? Do I see that bearing out in my own experience? And how is it true? And a lot of this, for me has been very abstract. It's like very difficult to verbalize. I was talking to someone recently who had just found out about people who don't have an internal monologue, and I was like, well, there are some people who don't have an internal monologue or a mind's eye. They are thinking in ways that we can't even begin to process, that we can't even begin to understand scientifically. They're thinking in all of these impressions and all of these strange, shapes, colors, textures that they are neither visual nor verbal. They are a secret third thing. And that is a lot of what has come up for me around this idea of your raw and rugged art being a magic spell. Is it has unlocked things for me that are neither visual nor verbal, that resist direct communication, direct expression. And I was thinking about this yesterday on a walk because I was talking to the sun and I was asking for some kind of input. And I did get things in words. I absolutely did. It was very helpful. But I also got a lot of, it almost was like speaking in tongues, sort of, except I felt in my head as I was receiving it and in my body that it actually wasn't even completely a language, that it had shapes that my mouth could kind of try to move around, but I don't think I could actually express it out loud. I don't know how exactly I would express this. I don't even know exactly what I was processing from it, but I was just having this conversation with the sun that was somehow not quite visual and not quite verbal. It was a secret third thing. And I was just being fully present with this experience in a way that I have only in the last couple of years even developed the capacity for. Because previously I had lived so much in my head that if I couldn't understand something intellectually, I didn't have time for it. But I was just watching myself be able to have this sort of dialogue, if you can call it that, and actually fully immerse myself in it and fully be present with it and appreciate what was happening without trying to make something of it. And I noticed a part of my brain in the background, like a part of myself, being like, wait, but shouldn't you be trying to translate it? Or like, what if you never understand what's being said here? What if you're never able to process it? Like, what if I had all of these anxious thoughts I noticed in the background about what I was supposed to do with this information and how I should be understanding it. And, this fear that I'm not doing it right or that I'm wasting my time. And I had to turn to that part and be like, it's okay that there are many things about the universe that we don't understand. And it is true that this interaction I'm having with the sun, I may never understand it. I may never know what transpired here, or what was exchanged here. But isn't it still cool to experience? And I sat back and I thought about that for a moment, and I was like, it is. It does feel cool to experience. And this part of me was like, well, that's neat. Okay. And then that was the end of it. And I got back from my walk and I was just like, wow, it's crazy that I can have conversations with the sun that are not even conversations, that I can't even extract anything from. There's that like colonialist mindset. Sometimes I feel like a meme referring to like colonialism and capitalism so much. But it is to blame for a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we can heap on those structures. But anyway, when I really allow myself to stop trying to do things, in the most generic sense possible, because I'm always trying to, as a modern day human, I'm always thinking about what I need to do, the creative projects that I'm working on, and the things that I want to make happen in my life, and all of the stuff that I should be doing. And it really is fascinating to back up from that and be like, wait a minute, I get to just be. Not all the art that I make has to be going somewhere for some kind of purpose. Some of it can just be for me and a way of transforming the energy that is available to me, not so that I can do something with it, not so that I can make something happen and manifest something, or we have a bad tendency to take spiritual principles and apply them in a capitalist, materialist way of trying to make something happen, trying to get something done. If I'm not extracting something from my spiritual practice, then why am I doing it? How is it serving me? But it's really important to practice unlearning that, to slowly start unwinding that thinking and think about maybe what I'm extracting is enjoyment. Maybe what I'm extracting is nervous system regulation. Because, I'll tell you, it was very regulating for me to have that non-conversation with the sun. But it's like, we have to zoom out and imagine that, like, there may be value to what's happening here that I don't consciously understand because I've been given no schema or blueprint with which to understand it. It does not fit into the mental model I have been given. And that sort of uncertainty is really challenging to be present with. It's really challenging to even entertain and to be in that space. But that's where the magic lives. That is what actually helps you connect with your aliveness, your eros, your desire, and feel your own humanity and feel like life has purpose and meaning and like it's worth living. It's worth being here. It's worth being me. And I just keep thinking about this lately, especially because I've really spent a lot more time recently getting back into my drawing practice. I kind of let that fall by the wayside while I was working on my sigil merch and my PDF and all of these other things. I've been doing so many things lately. And I really let myself take the week of the US election to just kind of like do nothing but make art for me. And it felt so good. And also I noticed though how I already had kind of built back up some of those old ideas about like not wanting to waste my time by making bad art or like All of these various like perfectionist routines started kind of coming back in. And I had to like work through them again the first couple drawings that I made and get myself back into that state of just being curious, enjoying what's happening, and let it be for me and let it be about the experience and not the result. But like every time I would drop myself back into it, and as the week went on and I sort of like stopped having those roadblocks pop up again, I reconnected with how amazing it feels to just allow yourself to be in the experience and be in uncertainty. That massive cloud of uncertainty of like, what's going on here? Like, what am I doing anything useful? Like, what is being transmitted between me, between spirit, between whosoever and whatsoever? And it felt really nourishing and really healing and reminded me of why I am inspired to create things. And I found myself excited to go back to work this week and excited to communicate this new energy I felt coming in. And I wasn't sure what this energy wanted to be. It was like, I like to say that at that point it exists as a vision, because I think there's a difference between a vision, something that is not quite an image, not quite a feeling, not quite a thought, and an idea form. To me, the vision is the idea. And then a lot of times, like what we call ideas are like, I call them idea form in the Platonian sense. That is a vision that is beginning to coagulate into a blueprint. It is becoming something expressible. And at this point, I was really in the pure vision of it, of like, I'm just feeling this energy, I'm feeling this frequency, and I don't know what it wants to be, but I know that it is itching to get to people. And it wants me to sign, seal, and deliver it so that people can enjoy it. And I actually really started to feel this energy coming in about 2 weeks ago. I hit a point where I was still following certain threads in my writing, and they felt important to act on. I felt available sacral energy to do those things, but I also felt a part of me moving on from it already. Like there is something else coming in that wants to be written about. Not anything drastically different, but I just felt an energy changing that I needed to follow. And I kept telling Cody that I was like, I don't know what it wants to be yet. Like, right now, as I often say, like, it's just for me. Only I get to feel it. Only I get to be in it, because I don't know how to express it yet. It's not ready to be expressed. And today, I sat down to write an article, to write something. I got into like my channeling space, which I never have expectations necessarily that channeling sessions will necessarily end up in an article. They just generally do. So I was pretty sure that's what I was sitting down to do today, is write an article. And I started writing it, and I was immediately using this strange literary device. I'm like, wait, what is this? Are people gonna think, is this weird? Is this confusing? But it just kind of came out, and I kept following it. And I realized after I wrote it and was reading it back that I was like, oh, duh. I can't explain this intellectually. It is not ready to be explained intellectually. It may never be ready to be explained intellectually, but that's why I'm a fucking poet, is so that I can describe things in abstract metaphor. I can describe things in a way that people can feel and plug into, in a way that the mind is not ready to understand. And I ended up really happy with how this article turned out, and really kept it short and sweet, which is strange for me because I normally write really long things. And this was like just over 1,000 words or something. But I was like just trusting it, because I felt so moved and so excited by what came out. And I was just like, yes, this is the energy. And I love that moment. I love that exciting feeling when something moves from abstract vision into idea form, into something that is expressible and something that I can share with others. That, like, That is the moment that I and a lot of artists live for. It's frankly the moment that I have gotten very addicted to over time and felt like if I'm not able to be in that space, my time is wasted. I don't want to commit energy to my creativity. And that's kind of what the task has been for me over the last couple of years. And what so much of my current teaching and writing is based around is helping people who are going through that get better at just being in the present, being in the void, being in the uncertainty, and letting your creative expression be for you. Because, again, this is not necessarily expression in the sense that you're perfectly executing your vision, that it's not perfectly coming into idea form. It's more, the type of expression I'm talking about is more like an experimentation phase where you're using a lot of stream of consciousness, a lot of poetry, a lot of like abstract scribbles if you're into that. You're using various abstract methods to relate to the vision and to just see what seems to encapsulate it. You try something and then you look at it afterwards and you check in with that felt sense, you check in with that energy, and you ask yourself, does this match? Am I getting closer to expressing the energy? Am I getting closer to executing and materializing my vision? And that space, it is one that I feel like when I was younger, I was very comfortable in and probably more comfortable in. But over the course of school and, people pleasing and perfectionist parents and all of that jazz, it got drained out of me. And I learned to be more obsessed with like being able to actually perfectly execute my vision in a way other people can appreciate and really plug into. And not allowing myself to just be in the experimentation phase anymore. And so like now, I am learning to get back to that, and I'm learning how to really be in that space without trying to force it to be something or produce something, and without getting overly attached to the eventual outcome. Because some ideas can never be expressed. Some ideas may not even be meant to be expressed by you. Maybe you are not the channel that they can come through. And there's a deep grief and loss associated with that plagues a lot of artists, that turns them into these suffering creative types. But that's because of the focus on external results and the ego's attachment to what externalizing that thing and materializing that thing is going to add to its identity. But whenever we let go of that and are able to just appreciate it from an animistic perspective of like, this energy is visiting me, this being is visiting me, and I get to have a relationship with it, no strings attached, then we get to just feel the pleasure of it and just feel grateful that that idea and that energy visited us at all. We get to just appreciate the process for what it is and not think that we are incompetent as artists or something just because we weren't the right channel for that to come through. And I think this is another reason that lately, it's not even really lately, it's years that I've been thinking about this, years and years, but it's really been coming back around for me lately and feeling very salient for me right now. How much I enjoy imperfect art, especially I love film. It's definitely like one of my favorite mediums to consume. It's probably the medium that most inspires my work and is most generative for me to consume. And so I often think about how I love imperfect movies, and I tend to love the movies that other people violently complain about because of some stuff that didn't make sense, that didn't quite come together perfectly, because of the imperfections that feel confounding. And I think it's because people have this sense of anxiety when they can feel that distorted vision that just did not quite clarify in the final product. And I think people feel like a sense of loss, of wanting to be able to experience that thing in its purity. And they feel a frustration at not being allowed that. But I find that I'm kind of obsessed with that. I'm kind of obsessed with the sort of distortions that happen in the process of an artist whose channel was not quite meant to express something, maybe at all, or maybe just not yet. And the like weird funky twists and turns it takes when it comes out. Like I am fascinated and creatively inspired by the gnarled results of an imperfect execution. Not always at all, but a lot of times, you know? And I think it's because I have like a Geminian like chaos goblin love of yeah, I don't know, the distortion, the chaos, the things that like that defy our human attempts to control them. And I love the sort of tension in my being of both wanting that perfectly executed thing and wanting to be able to experience it, and also appreciating the thing that was actually allowed to be born, appreciating the sort of quote unquote failure. There's, yeah, there's just like this beautiful tension in that to me that I find very inspiring and exciting. Like if you've ever seen small children's attempts to like draw something and it ends up so like warped that it becomes a new thing entirely and is like beautiful and exciting and interesting in its own right. Like that's kind of the energy here for me. And that's how I think we are capable of loving our own raw, unfiltered, imperfect human expression. And you are 100% capable of looking at it and judging it a little bit with one or a series of parts of yourself, and also simultaneously appreciating it and giggling at it and enjoying it for what it is with other parts of yourself. You can be in the tension of looking at your little drawing and being like, is that supposed to be a horse? Do I even know what a horse looks like? And also being fascinated with the whole mysterious process of how something moves from whatever impression was left on your long-term memory to, you know, how your body is able to turn that into shapes and produce a final image. We don't have to look at these aspects of humanity as failures and as ugly things to be avoided or shamed. You can actually be enamored with it. And you know what? Fuck it. I think that's your assignment for today is like go try to draw like a horse or some other animal or some object from memory and just see what happens. That could be really fascinating and fun if you've never tried it before. And you know, don't be too upset if it comes out really weird and really rotten, because all of us have different visual memories, okay? And it's just cool, okay? It's cool to get to be a human and to get to it's fascinating to observe how our mind remembers those things, maybe not as pure images, but more as a feeling and impression. You could even try to, you could even get really abstract with it and just use like maybe some pastels or some watercolors or like even just, you know, scribbled shapes. I love scribbling, as we all know. And you could try to express just the feeling of that creature and like the impression that it has left on you outside of its visual shapes. You know, get in there and be fascinated by your own consciousness. That's the assignment. All right, folks, that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Just a reminder that if you want access to these podcast episodes 2 weeks early, just head over to Over the Grainbow on Substack. That is my name, Gray, NNBOW. And become a paid subscriber for $5 a month. You'll get access to tons of cool meditations and practices and all kinds of cool goodies. And you'll also get access to my entire series, Birthing the God Self, to help you become the site of inspiration and make your most inspired art yet. And if you want more of that vibe, I also have sigil-imbued merch inspired by the God Self series that is designed to help you embody your most creatively efficacious self. and connect with your genius. And that's all I have for you today. So, bye-bye.